Hey, it's John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and it's The Entrepreneurial You, the show for dedicated and passionate Caribbean entrepreneurs seeking daily inspiration, brought to you by author, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur Henika Watkis Porter. You must be prepared to ignite.
If you own a business, your true number one priority should be providing your product or service to your customer. But I don't like to mention that because that's like telling you to breathe. I shouldn't need to tell you to do that. Beyond that, if you're talking about growing your business, your number one focus should be on making the cash register ring, bringing in customers and actually getting them to pay you. So we'll just work backwards from there and look at like what is the most simple single thing I can do to bring on more customers. All these extra things, a website, a logo, wasting your time trying to get public relations or whatever, are all of these things necessary, or do they just help that one single thing?
Hi, this is Henika. I'm so glad you took the time to stop by today. In Jamaican parlance, Wagwan. Me glad to say it there. This episode is sponsored by HenikaWatkisporter.com as well as the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Now on HenikaWatkisporter.com, you can visit us for blogs, resources, books, online podcast courses, podcasts, and more. If you are new to the Entrepreneurial You podcast, be sure to check out past episodes with guests such as John Lee Dumas, Patrice Washington, Seth Godin, Richard Branson, Amy Porterfield, and a host of other game changers.
We needed to raise capital, but our experience with local financial institutions was that they were cautious and slow to act, and interest rates were far too high. We had real concerns about financing our business through outside equity investors and the possibility of interference. Could we get a fair valuation for our business? We had our own ideas about the business and its value. Should I go the traditional route of bank financing, or should I try the Jamaica Stock Exchange? So we made a call and experienced transformation of our business through conversations. I'm John Mafood, CEO of Jamaican Teas, and we're listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Give us a call today at 876-967-3271 to begin your transformation through conversation. We want to see your company listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
And now, here's today's episode. In the world of internet customer service, it's important to remember your competitor is only one mouse click away. Doug Warner. My peak performer, greetings to you and welcome to episode 206 of the Entrepreneurial You podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Henika Watkis Porter. Today's episode is with Dylan Ogline, and Dylan is a high school dropout from a small country town in Pennsylvania. He started his first business when he was 14, selling cell phones. In 2016, he scrapped 10 plus business projects, and started focusing on one single thing: digital marketing. Tired from struggling, getting no progress, and working from his freezing basement, not to mention nearly $1 million in debt, it was an uphill climb. Turns out, focus was the key. 4 short years later, he built Ogline Digital into a 7-figure agency, generating over $1 million in sales 3 years running. Dylan is now a leading expert in direct response advertising and business growth. He has now turned his focus to helping other people to start and grow their own hyper-profitable digital agency. Of course, I'm really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to be talking about, which is, by now, you know, it's no secret, right? The secret to success: focus. Welcome, Dylan.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
And it is my pleasure to have you. Now, before we dive into what we're going to be talking about today, what, if anything, have you heard about Jamaica?
Oh man, you just threw a curveball at me.
Yeah, I know I didn't. We talked about everything else except that in the pre-chat, right? Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to get that honest reaction.
You know what? I believe. What is the capital of Jamaica? I should know this off the top
That's
of my
all
head.
right, Kingston.
I'm pretty sure I've been there. So I've done a lot of traveling, and unfortunately, most of my like Central America, Caribbean, and all that jazz traveling has been on cruises, which I don't recommend. Is terrible. But I'm pretty sure I've been to Jamaica, and I loved how happy. I know I've been to Jamaica and several other countries all around that area, and I loved how happy and energetic the people were. That's what I know about it so far.
Okay, that's
man,
enough.
You really
That
threw a
is
curveball
true.
at me.
That is actually very true. We're very energetic, very full of life, very loving people. So yeah, you got it right.
Okay, got the right answer there.
Yeah. All right. So I pretty much gave the story away in the introduction of you, right? But we're going to take it through nonetheless. And I want to start with your entrepreneurial journey, Dylan. Just give me a little overview of what your experience has been like in all the various businesses that you've undertaken.
Sure. So, well, I think you mentioned it in your lovely reading of the bio. My first business was when I was 14, selling cell phones. I guess the short part, it's kind of skipped over almost, is the between the ages of I think I dropped out of school when I was 14 or 15 or so. The period between then and I probably would have been 27 at the time. So. Wow, yeah, it was like 12 years of just grinding and getting nowhere.
Okay, hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Yes.
Because let's start at the beginning. Why did you drop out of school?
Sure. So I started my first business, like I mentioned, when I was 14. And very quickly, I was skipping school like every Friday. Somehow I convinced my parents to let me do that so I could work on the business. And it was growing. I was making maybe like $2,000 a month, which when you're like 14, 15 is all the money in the world. I mean, I was Bill Gates. I was making it rain. And so I convinced them to let me skip every Friday. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I definitely want to go down this business route. And I started taking all these business classes. And where I was from, just like the business classes in my high school, junior high, were just terrible. Like I had read maybe 2 or 3 business books, and I already knew more than the teachers. So I convinced my parents somehow, some way, that let me do homeschooling. And at the time, much different than what it was today. Like I personally had to buy the books. I personally had to pay for the school, which was like several $1,000s. I think it was like $3,000 or $4,000. And I was like, oh yeah, this will allow me to work on the business whenever I want, and then I can also do school and everything. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, let's do that. So I convinced them. I didn't drop out at this point. I just went to homeschool, and I never opened any of the books, never took any of the tests. And it eventually got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm obviously not going to do the work. Just let me quit school. And they did.
Yeah.
So,
and fast track to where you were before I got back to that story.
Yeah. So I quit school, and then it was shortly after that, or right before. I'm going to have to say it was probably right after that. My merchant account, my credit card processor, shut me down because they found out somehow, some way they found out I was under the age of 18. So that business instantly got shut down. Yeah. So that started the 12-ish years of just bouncing around from the shiniest object, newest idea to the newest idea, not getting anywhere, massively in debt. I didn't know what a vacation was getting nowhere. And that led to, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of terribleness. And then eventually in 2016, I scrapped everything after, guess I got a lesson from a long-term mentor of mine, and scrapped everything and just focused on one single thing. And that was the digital agency work. And then I took it even further. It was, not just that business, but also just one service, digital advertising management.
Before we get into all of that, I want to kind of get a sense of the various businesses that you would have experimented with, and perhaps even some of the successes that you would have had. Just pick one and talk about the success. So just kind of take us through some of those ideas that that you ran with, and what was the most successful thing for you.
I'll answer the latter part of that question first. I wouldn't consider anything I did prior to 26. I mean, literally 12 years of just nothing really working. How I made ends meet was just doing anything I possibly could to make money. A lot of it was just the agency work. So if you needed a website, I was your guy. If you needed a logo, I could do it. If you needed a PowerPoint design or a banner design, I could get it done for you. Just always doing like this creative agency type of work. But I was doing everything for everybody, and I wasn't making any money with it. So because of that, I focused on, I was chasing the shiniest object. One of the businesses that actually ended up making like $300 or $400 a month, I think I had maybe a couple months where it went over 500, was Kindle publishing. I took this training program where the guy taught, I forget who he was, but he taught how to basically start a Kindle publishing business. You pay writers like maybe $50 to write a book. You get somebody to make a cover. You target certain keywords. And, you sell your ebook for $3 or whatever on Kindle. And like that was one of the things. That one actually generated money though, but very little. I also did. I tried creating a jobs website. Like I was creating a website, and I don't know why. I don't know why this was a thing, but like an individual website for different cities. So you would have like, and I forget what the name was, like miamijobs.com, newyorkcityjobs.com. And like, it would just be jobs in that city. Spent a ton of time building it, and it never even launched. I started a lyrics website, like music lyrics. So, and I don't even know how I was going to get the lyrics. I don't even know why I started doing this, but it was like, I could have thousands and thousands of pages of content, and then just have like Google ads on them. And I was like, oh, this is going to be big. And it never even launched. It never even.
So I want to say to my persons listening right now that, if you're feeling confused and frustrated and just going from business to business and hopping here, hopping there, all isn't lost, because we're going to find out more from Dylan, about his successes in what he's currently doing now. So just so that you have some hope, just don't feel disheartened. All isn't lost.
It can certainly feel that way. That's for sure.
Yeah, right. When you're going through it feels that way. Like, there's never going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. The sun won't shine, and you're just in this dark place. But What have you learned throughout that journey, besides the main thing that we're going to be spending a little more time on, Dylan? What have you learned throughout the time when you've been experimenting with all these ideas, some of which you didn't even launch?
So what I'm going to say two things. I'm going to say I took, looking back on it now, which of course hindsight's 2020, I took two things away from it. One, which of course we're going to talk about, is focus probably. At the time there's a saying, like, the man who chases many rabbits catches none. And like, that was me, because I wasn't, we none of these things ever launched. And that was me chasing so many different rabbits. So I never caught one. It wasn't like they failed. They just never got off the ground. Or if they did launch, or if I did actually get things going, like, I wasn't that good at it because I was chasing so many different things. So the lesson for me, the first and the biggest lesson, which we can talk about more later, obviously, is focus. The second lesson, which I'll tell in the form of a story, because, I mentioned, like, at the end of 2016, I scrapped all these projects and just focused on the agency work, just focused on digital marketing. The reason for that is I got this call from a long-term mentor of mine, and this was like end of 2016. And, we catch up, and I lie to him, and I say, yeah, things are great. Things are beautiful. I got all these things going on. Things are great. And he sees through the BS, and he sees through that I'm lying to him. He calls me out on it. And, we get to talking, and things suck. Things are terrible. I'm not making any money. I'm barely making ends meet, blah, blah, blah. And eventually gets to the point, and he says something to me. He says, you need to stop trying to build an airline and instead focus on drilling for oil, which is kind of silly. But what he goes on to explain to me then is, like, all of these business ideas that you're focusing on are low margin businesses, like the Kindle publishing or the Lyrics website, or what was the other thing I mentioned, the Jobs website. He's like, you're going to have to be like the best in the world at those things to make really good money. And he compared it to an airline. He's like, the airline industry is notoriously difficult for people to make money in. So, like, you could be the best business person in the world, but still lose money in an airline because it's just a difficult industry to make money in. He's like, instead, focus on businesses that are high margin, businesses that you could be just okay in or just good at. You don't have to be the best in the world at, and you could still make money. So he's like, at the time, I don't think oil's as profitable now, but at the time, he's like, you could just be okay in the oil industry and you're going to make a ton of money. You don't need to be the best in the world at that. If you're the best in the world, you're going to make billions. So he's like, figure out the business that all these projects you're working on, like, what's the one that's high margin? What's the one that if you focus on it, you're going to be able to actually make money, like good money. And if you end up just being okay with it, you still hit your financial goals. Those were the two main things. So now I don't even look at a project unless it's, well, now I don't even look at other projects, but wow. I wouldn't unless it was high margin.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Dylan, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you next. What was that turning point for you? And so you've shared your turning points, but I know many times, I've had eureka moments before, and perhaps my community can relate to this, having these eureka moments, but once the novelty of it has worn off, or you're not implementing it immediately, like I think Mel Robbins talk about that 5-second rule, where if you don't immediately act on an idea, then chances are you'll never act on it, right? If you allow 5 seconds to pass, you perhaps never act on it. So what was the timeline between you getting that eureka moment from your former mentor, calling you out on your BS, and you actually dropping all of these myriad of things, bright, shiny objects that you were involved with and I want to say distracted by, because they were really absolutely distracting you from what you're actually doing now, which is making you money and causing change, positive change. So what was that timeline for you?
We were having the conversation a November night in 2016. Like I remember where I was walking outside my house, in the front of my house, whenever I was having this conversation with him. I remember what I was looking at as he was telling me this advice. And it was, it was cold, and I went downstairs, like literally that night. We hung up off the phone. And that night I went down to my freezing basement office where I didn't even have a chair. I literally sat on a bucket because I couldn't afford a chair. Sitting on a bucket in my freezing basement office, I just sat at my computer and just went through everything. If you like the Kindle, I mentioned that. Like I kept that project going, but I didn't put any focus on it. It was like, okay, I'm going to scrap any ideas I have on it. It's still making a couple $100 a month, so I'm going to let it run. And if it dies out, it dies out. Anything that's not making money, I just literally deleted the folder. Just delete. Wow. Just got rid of all of it. Emptied the recycling bin on my computer and just.
You were serious, dead serious.
I was dead serious. I had reached that tipping point where, I was spending years working all the time, getting absolutely nowhere. So I literally just that night, stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning and just scrapped absolutely everything. And then I took it even further with the focusing and just, relentlessly focusing on the one thing. I was like, okay, the digital agency, that's where I that's my oil. That's drilling for oil. That's my oil company. But then I took it even further and I said, okay, I'm just going to focus on digital ad management because it's scalable and it's high margin. And then I had to stop myself because I'm like, okay, I need to get a logo and I need to get a website and I need to get a, corporation set up. I need to do all this stuff. And I was like, no, like none of that stuff is really going to matter. I need to relentlessly focus. I didn't even set up a website. I didn't set up a, professional email or anything like that. I didn't have a logo. I didn't have any of that stuff until earlier this year. It was just relentless focus on the thing that was most likely going to get me to my financial goal.
What you've described in terms of many things that you were doing, a lot of creatives go through that challenge, right? The bright, shiny objects, and you don't know what to choose because, and all your babies are beautiful.
Yes. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. What was your emotional state while you were saying, because I know immediately when your former mentor would have shared that with you, like you would have felt like, yes, it's the right thing to do. He's making sense. But even while you are going through the process of getting rid of all these other beautiful babies what was that like for you? Did you find yourself, even though you were doing these things, deleting the folders, emptying your rubbish bin, your trash? What was that process like for you? Did you feel any kind of reticence? Did you have any reservations? What was it like?
To be honest, it was something that it felt freeing. It felt like I was letting so much weight off of my shoulders. So it felt good. It's tough to put into words, but I will say that I always had this nagging feeling like, I'm not getting anywhere and I'm focusing on all these different things. And it was I mentioned earlier, hindsight's 2020. It's one of those things where the answer was right in front of my face. I didn't have that bird's eye 30,000 foot view of myself to see what was so obviously the problem because I was so blinded because the problem was right in front of me.
Now, you also said something which is quite important, and you can very well miss it if you're, if perhaps if you've not experienced it yourself, that you didn't bother to focus on getting a website and doing all of these things until lately. And I find that many times perhaps it's a way of distracting us, or we thinking that we're doing stuff so we have the tangible proof of the website, of the marketing stuff. We're very good at that, painting that picture. But the real business that will make us money, we're not focusing on. We're focused on the stuff that makes, glitzy stuff. Now, how important is that? Or how important was it for you to not pay attention much to those things at the onset?
Absolutely mission critical, because I tend to be a perfectionist. And even if people aren't a perfectionist, I hear a lot from people who are starting their own business, things like, I've spent the last 6 months building this thing out or writing content or doing PR or doing this and that. And it's like, well, you don't even know if you have a business yet. So just relentlessly prove your product market fit, prove that you actually can build the business and whatnot. And the truth is what you'll realize is that most of the fluff, the stuff that's not necessary, there was stuff that you thought was mission critical in the beginning. It's like, you don't need that. Just focus on getting people to give you money in exchange for your product or service, because then that verifies that you have product market fit.
And that you actually have a business. Yeah.
Say I had gone down and I had, built out a website, and then I get business cards, and then I do this, and then I do that, and then I start, I got to get press out there. So then I start doing all that, and then I'm like, I need to write a case study, and I need to do this, and then I go to actually sell it to the marketplace, the digital ad management service, and everybody's like, no, we don't actually need that. We need search engine optimization services or whatever. That pivot is going to feel uncomfortable because I just spent all this time building all this stuff out. If you don't have that weight on your shoulders, you can just quickly adapt to the marketplace.
So how did you get your first clients without all the trappings of your website, your logo, and all these beautiful things?
In my particular case, because I had been doing agency work, I had clients previously who had built their website, or, I mentioned building a logo or banner designs. I was doing everything for everybody. So I had previous clients, and I just went back to them and I'm like, hey, I'm offering digital marketing management right now. 2 or 3 sentences describing the service and what I think we can do for your business. Would you like to jump on a call? That was it. And then I got, one client, and then the first client is always the hardest by all means, but got the first client and it just took off from there. That was it.
And I think what is important for us to point out at this time is that it depends on where you are on your entrepreneurial continuum. Let me say that. Because for somebody who's just starting business, perhaps that wouldn't have been, the best approach, right? Somebody who's never done business before, they're going to have to perhaps show some form of digital footprint, whether it is that they have a beautiful social media page or something. So it is important, I'm finding, based on what you're saying, Dylan, is to understand where you are, the resources that you have in front of you, and what is most important that will get you the quickest result, the best result in the fastest possible time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Use the resources that you have available. That's I like that. Yeah. Whatever it might be. And it might be something, if we're specifically talking about a digital agency, it might be something where your parents own or are accountants or something. So they own an accounting firm. So maybe they don't become a client, but you can use that as a reference point and be like, I know a little bit about the accounting business, so I can target accountants, and that can be your niche or something. That's using a resource that you have available to you. It's whatever advantage that you can have in the marketplace, use it.
And perhaps, do some work for them for free and use that as testimonials, and as a sample of what you can produce and so on and so forth. So I want to have you sum up right here at this juncture in our conversation, Dylan, the important role really of focus. So kind of bring that home. I mean, we would have demonstrated that through the things that you have said and your experience, but bring that home for us in a simplified paragraph or so.
Oh,
yeah. Well, sentence or two. Paragraph sounds scary, right?
No pressure.
No pressure there. Right. So kind of bring it home for us.
If you own a business, your true number one priority should be providing your product or service to your customer. But I don't like to mention that because that's like telling you to breathe. I shouldn't need to tell you to do that. Okay. Beyond that, if you're talking about growing your business, your number one focus should be on making the cash register ring, bringing in customers and actually getting them to pay you. So we'll just work backwards from there. and look at like what is the most simple single thing I can do to bring on more customers. Like all these extra things, a website, a logo, wasting your time trying to get, public relations or whatever. Are all of these things necessary, or do they just help that one single thing?
It does make sense. Thank you so much. It has been my absolute pleasure talking with you, Dylan Ogline. I really, really appreciate the time that you've spent with us. And
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you, because I know in our pre-chat you did talk about a free ebook that you will have at some point. No, by the time this airs, it will be out. So go ahead and share the perhaps the highlight of what it's about, and the link will be in the show notes.
Sure. So aside from my digital agency, I also have a training program called Agency 2.0, where I teach. My goal is to be able to teach anybody who, you don't have to know about digital marketing, but teach anybody everything they need to know to start and grow their own digital marketing agency. That is all under my personal website, which is dylanogline.com. I will be having, you mentioned the ebook, which is the 6 steps to a 6-figure agency. That ebook is going to be free. I don't know. I'm sure we'll probably add a link in the show notes to the specific landing page. But if you just go to my website, dylanogline.com, by the time this airs, I'll definitely have some kind of link or something that'll show where you can click and get that ebook for free.
Okay, there we have it. Thank you so much. Again, my pleasure, Dylan. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love your story. Yes, absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
really love your story. And thank you, my peak performer, for tuning in to this episode with Dylan Ogline. I certainly look forward to connecting with you next week. In the meantime, I would love the opportunity to coach you one-on-one to start your podcast, or if you want me to consult with your company, let me know. You can reach out to me by visiting the website, henicowatkisports.com. There is a WhatsApp icon to the right of the page, the homepage. Just send me a message and it comes directly to my phone. So I'd be happy to take you on your journey to success. You're a successful podcast. You have a voice. You have a message to spread, and I want to help you to spread that message. Now, I'll close with a point of hope, as customary for the past couple of months. And here it is today. Praise the Lord, my soul, all my inmost being, praise his holy name. Praise the Lord, my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your sins and heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit and crowns you with love and compassion, who satisfies your desires with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Psalm 103, verse 1 to 5. Walk good.